A group can be a military aviation unit, a U.S.Army combat arms, a combat support organization larger than a battalion but smaller than a brigade, a U.S.Marine Corps logistics combat element unit consisting of 3 regiments, or a Marine Air Ground Task Force command element unit, a U.S.Navy organization consisting of a combination of 1 or more aircraft carriers, surface warfare ships, amphibious warfare ships, submarines, auxiliary ships, landing craft, embarked aircraft units, and/or embarked special warfare landing forces, or a naval special warfare or explosive ordnance disposal unit, a component of military organization, or a military formation. Usage of the terms group and wing differ from one country to another, as well as different branches of a defense force. In some cases, groups therefore vary considerably in size. The very nature of warfare dictates widely varying composition of groups for aviation, ground, and naval forces units. Overview. In many air services, a group is made up of 2 to 4 squadrons and is usually commanded by a lieutenant colonel, commander, or an officer of equivalent rank. In France and Germany, the precursors of the U.S.Army, Acute de l'Air, and Luftwaffe formed groups and during the early stages of World War I. In World War II, the groups of the U.S.Army Acute de l'Air were equivalent of the squadrons found in the RAF of the USAAF. They comprise 2 escadrilles, but sometimes only 1, or as many as 4. French groupements were similar to the RAF groups. For example, the Groupe de Bombardement I-31, a French bomber squadron, was operationally part of Groupement de Bombardement 6 in May 1940. In the German Luftwaffe bomber and fighter forces, the Gruppe was the principal unit of action. They were usually labeled after a Geschwader, such as I.SDG-76, which in May 1940 was under the command of Stuka Geschwader II. Gruppe usually were organized in 3 German Staffeln. United States Air Force. In the United States Air Force, a group consists of 2 or more squadrons, often functionally aligned within a wing. REFI 38-101 Air Force organization. A group is a level of command between wings and squadrons. Groups bring together multiple squadrons or other lower echelon units to provide a broader capability. Groups may be dependent or independent. A dependent group is a mission, maintenance, mission support, medical, or large functional unit that encompasses a number of related squadrons to provide the specified capability to a parent wing. Such groups may possess small supporting staff elements, such as standardization and evaluation, quality control, that are organized as sections. Quote, "An independent group has the same functions and responsibilities as a like-type wing, but its scope and size do not warrant wing-level designation, and associated overhead costs. A group requires at least 400 personnel, while a wing requires at least 1,000. A fighter wing, for example, is normally composed of dependent wings, an operations group of typically 3 flying squadrons and an operations support squadron, and a maintenance group with aircraft, equipment, and component maintenance squadrons and a maintenance support squadron. Wings responsible for the airbase also have other dependent groups such as a mission support group and a medical group. The dependent group commanders are considered to be in command billets, but they function like staff officers in other organizations. Independent groups are effectively small wings with both flying and maintenance squadrons. USAF groups are usually commanded by officers in the grade of 5, a colonel. Wings are also usually commanded by officers in the grade of 5, but some are commanded by officers in the grade of 6 of brigadier general. Marine Corps Corps in the USMC. The unit title group is used in marine aviation, marine combat logistics, and MAGTF-CE organizations. Marine aviation groups. A marine aircraft group consists of 2 or more aircraft squadrons and can range to as many as 10. A MAG also contains a marine aviation logistics squadrons, a marine wing support squadron, and a MAG headquarters detachment with a colonel as the commanding officer. The MAG is the organizational equivalent of a Marine regiment. MAGs are analogous to U.S. Navy carrier air wings, U.S.Army combat aviation brigades, and USAF wings, although smaller MAGs could be more comparable to USAF independent groups. Marine air control groups consist of several aviation command, control, communications, and air defense units. These units include a Marine Air Control Squadron, a Marine Air Support Squadron, a Marine Tactical Air Command Squadron, a Marine Wing Communication Squadron, and a Low-Altitude Air Defense Battalion, detachment under a MACG Headquarters Detachment, commanded by Colonel. Marine Air Training Support Groups provide administrative control and training support for Marines at formal naval aviation training programs. These groups, commanded by Colonel, do not have subordinate squadrons assigned and are not part of the Fleet Marine Force. 2 or more MAGs, and a MACG, under a Marine Aircraft Wing Headquarters supported by a Marine Wing Headquarters Squadron form a Marine Aircraft Wing, usually commanded by a Major General, and is the FMF organizational equivalent of a Marine Division. The MOR is analogous to a USAF numbered Air Force or a British Royal Air Force group. Marine Combat Logistics Groups. Marine logistics groups are commanded by a general officer and consist of a MLG headquarters and 3 logistics regiments. These regiments include a headquarters regiment and 2 combat logistics regiments. 1 CLR provides direct logistical support to an assigned MARDIV and the other provides general logistical support to an assigned Marine Expeditionary Force. The MLG is the USMC organizational equivalent of a U.S. Army Sustainment Command. MAGTF-CE Headquarters Groups. The headquarters unit of a MAGTF is designated as a headquarters group and exercises command and control manpower, intelligence, operations and training, logistics, civil military planning, and communications functions over the other elements of the MAGTF. The MAGTF HQG consists of communications, intelligence, law enforcement, and radio detachments, companies, and battalions, and attached force reconnaissance and air naval gunfire liaison company teams, platoons, detachments, and companies, and may have civil affairs and other specialized unit elements attached. The size of the HQG is relative to the size of the MAGTF. A Marine Expeditionary Unit HQG is a company-sized unit of approximately 200 officers and enlisted members, typically commanded by a major. A Marine Expeditionary Brigade HQG is a battalion-level organization of about 800–200 personnel and is usually commanded by a lieutenant colonel, while a Marine Expeditionary Force HQG is a regimental equivalent command of roughly 3,000 members with a colonel as the commanding officer. Navy Carrier Strike Group. A CSG usually consists of 1 aircraft carrier with an embarked carrier air wing, 1 or 2 guided missile cruisers, a destroyer squadron of 2 or 3 guided missile destroyers, 1 or 2 attack submarines, and a logistics support ship, all under the command of an embarked flag officer. All the aircraft on a United States Navy aircraft carrier, historically, were called the Carrier Air Group regardless of whether the total was 72 to 90 on a fleet carrier or 20 to 30 on an escort carrier. Even today, the commander of the Carrier Air Wing is called CAG, standing for Commander Air Group. A USN aircraft wing is an F-5 command roughly analogous to a USMC aircraft group or an USAF wing. Group is no longer a USN term for aviation, but the immediate superior over Carrier Air Wing commander is the Carrier Strike Group commander, a surface or aviation rear admiral in the grade of 6 or 7, with a mixed air and surface staff, who integrates 4 major USN commands: a Carrier Air Wing, an aircraft carrier, a cruiser, and a destroyer squadron, into a coherent air-surface fighting force. Amphibious Ready Group. An ARG is composed of an amphibious assault ship, a dock landing ship, an amphibious transport dock, and an embarked Marine Expeditionary Unit under the command of an embarked USN flag officer or USMC general officer. Expeditionary Strike Group. An ESG consists of an ARG and one or more guided missile cruisers, guided missile destroyers, and/or attack submarines, all under the command of an embarked flag officer. The ESG may also include land-based maritime patrol aircraft. Submarine Group. ASUBGRU consists of 2 or 3 submarine squadrons under a flag officer. Surface Action Group. A SAG usually consists of a destroyer squadron consisting of 3 or 4 guided missile destroyers with embarked helicopter maritime strike squadron detachments, all under the command of the DESRON Commodore. Naval Special Warfare Group. ANSWGRU consists of 1 or more SEAL delivery vehicle, or special boat teams along with headquarters, training, and support personnel, all under the command of a captain. Explosive Ordnance Disposal Group. An EODGRU consists of 4 EOD mobile units, a training and evaluation unit, and a diving and salvage unit. Army. In the United States Army, certain non-aviation formations were organized into groups, vice brigades or regiments. These units were generally smaller than brigades, usually consisting of from 2 to 4 battalions, squadrons, separate companies, batteries of troops, and/or detachments. The corresponding aviation unit in the U.S. Army and Air Force, a Navy wing or a Marine aircraft group is the Combat Aviation Brigade. United Kingdom. In the RAF and the Air Forces of many Commonwealth countries, a group is made up of several stations or wings, each of which typically controls 2 or more squadrons, so that a group normally includes 6 to 10 squadrons. When the ranks of the RAF were designed, an officer with the rank of group captain commanded such a unit, although by the time of World War II, many groups were commanded by air commodores or air vice marshals. RAF groups are generally not the equivalent of a USAF wing, but more analogous to a USAF numbered Air Force, commanded by an air general officer with 200 to 400 aircraft. At the height of the combined bomber offensive in WW2, Main Force RAF Bomber Command and 8th Air Force were considered cognate organizations and shared the same operational headquarters, RAF manning it at night and USAF manning it during the day. Bomber Command was commanded by an officer in a grade of Air Chief Marshal that today is considered of 9, while 8th Air Force was commanded by a Lieutenant General. Groups in Bomber Command were somewhat analogous to the USAF air divisions responsible for generating combat power and respectively, usually commanded by air vice marshals and major generals, or occasionally by air commodores or brigadier generals. From 1943 to 1945, RAF groups were composed of bases, which were analogous to USAF wings. These were the units tasked for forces and usually all aircraft from the same RAF base, a USAAF wing operated together in a mission. RAF bases were usually commanded by Air Commodores and USAAF wings by colonels or brigadier generals. Bases were composed of stations commanded by group captains, which were analogous to USAF groups commanded by lieutenant colonels or colonels and controlling the air operations from its assigned air station. RAF stations typically controlled 1 to 2 flying squadrons, each of 1 to 3 flights. Stations were analogous to USAF groups, which were composed of 4 squadrons, which squadrons were more like RAF bomber flights than RAF squadrons. In 1945 there were RAF bomber squadrons with 40 or more Lancasters that were larger than some USAAF bombardment groups, some of which had less than 40 B-17s or B-24s. On average, Lancaster and Halifax squadrons provided 13.6 aircraft per mission every 4 days. B-17 and B-24 groups provided, on average, 27 aircraft per mission every 4 days over the course of the war. Thus, the 4-squadron B-17 and B-24 groups were on average twice the size of an RAF squadron, most of time having 2 flights. RAF stations are also controlled by a particular group, although expeditionary air groups control expeditionary air wings directly. Groups are directly subordinate to a command. In the British Fleet Air Arm and some other naval air services, a group usually consists of 3 squadrons.